Why, hello there. Do you have one of these things? If so, you'll be happy to know the Kraken has now been updated to Gen 2 and can work with the power seats. Bye for now then. So we all know why you're here. You need an updated instruction. Make sure you download the latest instruction guide through the QR code inside your box. Feel free to print it or look at it on your phone if you want to save a tree's life. Your call. You're going to get a bag with your ARB compressor. It's going to have a switch and the hardware we're going to use. This is pretty much, we're going to use this. There's also this harness to use the ARB switches and stuff. You're not going to need that. We are going to use the big power harness. It's going to get us exactly where we need to go with the battery. So, step one, flip the compressor over. Careful, it is kind of heavy. Then, we're going to take our Kraken, we're going to put it on the bottom. Make sure where the vents go is going to face backwards, or where the big holes are. Now, you'll notice there's like a lot of options here. So, if you have a Jeep with manual seats and you're not doing the pressure control upgrade, you're going to do the very most front holes. Every other configuration, very back holes. All the other options would be manual seats with the pressure control module, power seats, and power seats with the pressure control module. All get the back. So the only time you use the very most front holes is manual seats with compressor only. Everything is in the manual, and if you're looking online, this is in color. So you'll be able to see where it tells you which holes to use. Now, we're gonna set it up as if it's a power seat, because that's what this vehicle is gonna go into today. Use all the bolts and lock washers. I recommend installing all these by hand and hand tightening, but if you're well versed in non-braking with the Ugga Dugga gun, by all means. Air compressor mounted to Kraken. Okay, so we're gonna start by doing the T-fitting. Now, it's not as tricky as it seems. We're gonna take a 10mm wrench. There is a nut at the front of this because we wanna loosen it a bit so we're able to rotate and put this wherever we want. Because if we can move it more forward, the T-fitting is going to snug up nicely in here. You don't have to do it too many times, but basically it's gonna allow us to move that. So, in our hardware kit, you're gonna see the T-fitting. It's already got its sealant on there. We're gonna screw it into here. Just be careful to not put any pressure on the T-fitting upward. Don't worry about scratching your sticker. It won't affect the airflow. So now you can see we can move it all the way down into here. So it's nicely a lot flatter and not sticking up in the way. Then we go back in and tighten that front little bolt. Next, we're going to take the longer tube, we're going to get it into make sure you feel it make kind of like a clicking feel when it goes in. So you'll take the rocker switch that we got from the ARB compressor. We gave you the tool to specially remove the cover. Gone. See how easy that was? You won't need this anymore. Now, on the back, there's little arrows. You want those arrows to point this direction. So that's how you know it's going in the right way. So you're gonna just make sure arrows in, and then it's not going anywhere. This is how you put the switch cover on. Not upside down, right side up. Even pressure, top and bottom. Fantastic. Now we've got our custom made harness. We're gonna plug it into the compressor. And then these 3 wires are gonna go to specific pins on the switch, which we have in the diagram. They gave you 2 vents because we don't want your compressor breathing in non-filtered air. Okay, now we've got the power wiring harness from the compressor. Now, we're not going to be able to fit that through the hole in the floor, or we're not going to be able to fit that either. Luckily, this is easy to take apart. And we've given you a wiring diagram in case you forget how it came apart. Or if it helps, take a picture. Pop off the piece that holds the wires from being able to back out. Don't lose it, we'll need that again. Now we're gonna pop out each one of these pins. So at the top, you're gonna be able to push in to depress a detent that allows you to pull the wire backwards. This can be done with a pin remover tool or a stout paper clip. Now we're gonna take out the maxi fuses. We're gonna strip the wires back just a bit. We have the 2 matching yellow ones. They need crimped. Make sure they can't pull back out. Twist both your negatives together. Grab your other butt connector, making sure both wires are in there before you crimp. Make sure your connection's good. If you've gotten to this point, you're ready to move on to the actual Jeep and install it in the vehicle. If you have opted for the optional pressure control upgrade system, please refer to the separate installation guide located on our website. As we found from the factory, ARB doesn't like to fully tighten this exhaust valve. So, with the proper 8mm socket, make sure it's nice and snug inside the manifold. You don't want that falling out. So next, we're going to loosen the top locking nuts, which are plastic. You may be able to get them by hand, but you may have to carefully use a set of pliers to get them started, because we're going to have to remove both of these solenoids in order to mount this in the bracket. Now we have to remove the solenoid. You'll see there's an O-ring here. There's a couple ways you can do this. I just wiggle as I'm pulling up and putting my finger to make sure the O-ring doesn't go flying, because you will need these upon reassembly. There it is. Do the same thing to this one. Done. Go ahead. First thing, we're gonna remove the male fitting. Sometimes these can be very tight. No longer needed. Next, we're gonna remove the upper plug, basically. So you'll see there's arrows on this. So as long as the arrows are pointing up, you know this one's the upper one. Now, as we've seen in the past, we just want to double check that this is also tight, because we're not going to need to take this one off. So just make sure it's nice and tight. We don't want any air leaks. First thing you have to do now that we've removed all the parts, the first thing installed is the ARB sensor. Without doing it in this order, it won't work. If you want, you can put some thread sealer on here, but it's unnecessary because all these fittings are sealed with O-rings. Next, we're going to do the right angle fitting. It's going to go right next to it. This piece swivels, so you don't have to worry about rotating the whole 90-degree fitting in the way. See? Moves. We have a diagram showing everything, but the last 2 things need to be installed are the 2 input fittings. They're identical, and they go in the only 2 holes left. Once again, guys, these aren't lug nuts. They don't have to be at 130 foot-pounds. If you've opted for the pressure control module, you won't need this hose that's here, so you can just push it in and pull the hose out. This is the bracket that's going to hold it. It's going to go underneath the plate like this. You can see it's pretty obvious which holes you're going to use, not the giant ones. So it's going to go here, bolt going through, nut on the other side. Once again, use the force if you're using power tools. We're going to provide you a 4-inch piece of tube. You're going to have to trim it to fit because there's a lot of variables in this section depending on when the Kraken was made. Also, you have the tube that you removed in case something goes wrong. So make sure the tube is fully seated at both ends. Then carefully maneuver it into the bracket like so. So you make sure that the metal end, because you'll see there's a plastic cog or a bright metal, goes towards the solenoid. Then the O-ring you saved from previous goes on. Then your plastic, just make sure you thread it on properly. All you gotta do is as tight as you can do with your fingertips. Okay, we've got the wiring harness from the pressure control unit. There's a lot of wire here. We do not need all of it. So you're gonna keep all the stuff that has tape, and then you're gonna cut 3 inches of this and keep this. So we're gonna strip all 3 of these wires. We're gonna combine both black wires. Put them on our piggyback blue terminal here. Make sure they're properly seated. We do our red, it's going to go into the pink terminal. Neither of these terminals are going to require heat shrinking. And as usual, make sure none of your wires can come out. So coming from a previous install, you'll have this harness all hooked up. You're going to see here how we've got the back of our switch. We're going to piggyback off the purple wire. So we're going to remove the purple wire, put the red wire with the piggyback facing outward, and we're going to plug our purple wire back in onto that piggyback. We're going to do the same thing to the black wire here with the black piggyback, with it facing to the outside like this, and then you put your black wire back in. As you can see, purple and red go here, and there's the other red, and all the blacks go to here. We can now re-plug in our compressor. So now we have the brain, which is this tiny little box that can probably also pick up cable. We're gonna plug this in. Then we're gonna neatly stow it underneath the switches and the valves here. And they'll neatly fit right there. As per the diagram, it is specific. Obviously this one is going to go to the switch, but the 2 relay ones that look the same, you're going to take the one that has an orange wire and put it on this one towards the switch, like so. And then we're going to take the one with the purple wire and put it on the other one. Then we're going to take this, plug it into the sensor. And now to make sure they don't fall out, we're going to use a 2.5 mil hex bit. And we're going to lock those down. They do not have to be heavily tightened. Now we're just going to make a neat package. We're going to take a trusty zip tie, put it around both harnesses, the tube provided, and put this in the T-fitting. Make sure it always gets the click. We're then going to wrap this around, put it in. You'll see it has an arrow pointing that's coming in from the compressor. And last but not least, we give you a red stopper to put on the other end. Now we're ready to go to the vehicle. If you're worried about damaging these terminal pins and having trouble getting through the hole, electrical tape will help you. We're using a colored one just so you can kind of see what's going on here. Try to put yourself a tail so it's easier to start peeling it off. Notice we have no fuses in. Hook the positive to the positive, red to red. Okay, we're now going to hook the negatives to one of the negative pins down here on the side. 10 mil ratchet wrench will do the trick. So we're going to feed this down. Your seats are either going to be a T50, or if you happen to have a Gladiator, it's going to be an inverted Torx. But since we're not working on a Gladiator, we're going to use this. We're going to move the seat forward so you can gain access to the rear bolts. So I'm removing the floor mat on one side so you can gain access. Taking out the back 2 bolts now that we've moved the seat all the way forward and up. Now we're going to tilt the seat back. So we're going to pop the carpet up so that we can gain access to the floor, because we're going to have to bring the wiring up through the floor. And we're also going to relocate, there's a pile of connectors related to the front camera. So you can just move this vent and you'll see the big pile of connectors under there that we're going to have to move. We're going to pop all the Christmas trees out for each connector. There we go. Now we have all the connectors separate. Relocate those in a second. I'm going to remove the bracket. There we go. So we take all 5 of these connectors and we're going to move them up into this corner, attach them to the zip tie, make it as neat and compact as possible so it won't interfere with either the Kraken or the seat. So we're going to put this vent back in for the floor, put it back over its thing, then we're going to pull out the rubber drain plug. Now if you're lucky enough, you'll have a friend that'll help you by feeding the wire through the hole and you can meet him on the other side. Also nice that we had that bright orange, made it really easy. So in our guide, it shows easily how to cut out the inside of the hole. I also do a little cut here so it's easier to go around the wire and you don't have to be so careful. As you can see, you go around the wire, go down to the hole. Ta-da! Either reference the color coding on our sheet to the connector, or if you took a picture beforehand and just reassemble it while you hear it's got to click so it doesn't come back out. So do each one carefully. There we go. That's all neatly in there. They're all fully seated. Now we're going to put the piece that stops them from falling out. Technically they wouldn't fall out if they're clipped in properly, but this is extra precaution. There you go. The connector is back together, following the color code. And when we plug together with the compressor, all the wires on either side should match color-wise and size. So we're just going to cover up with some Gorilla tape. Any duct tape will work. Don't you worry about water intrusion. The plugs wouldn't have held out water to begin with. That is already better sealed than it was before it had a wire through it. Okay, so now we're just going to trim the carpet or cut the one ear off on the one side. You can do it carefully with a sharp utility knife. Try not to cut yourself. There you go. Now we can put this back down. Make sure it goes back all the places it's supposed to. And we can grab this other piece. Make sure it goes back under the trim and clicks in the floor. So it's easiest to feed the tube that goes over to the fitting on the driver's seat now. Make sure when you're feeding through you don't get stuck with the park and brake cable. This works much better when you have somebody on the other side to catch it. Now it's time to grab our air compressor and Kraken that have been pre-assembled. What makes it easier to install it is you pop the Christmas tree off of this giant airbag connector, and there's another Christmas tree holding the wiring a little farther. This will give us a lot more slack so we can easily slide it around. Here's our Kraken. You can just go down and around like this. Now, if we don't plug it in, it don't work, right? So now you just gotta finagle this tight situation under here. So we're gonna take the crossover tube that we ran to the driver's side. Just gonna hook it up to the 90-degree elbow. Make sure it clicks in. You can't pull it out. There we go. Make sure to put back together the airbag connector mounting Christmas tree here. Now we're on the driver's side. We're going to install the Kraken driver's side bracket. You only have to remove the one seat foot bolt. You just push back at the back of the seat. There, it's already there. Put the bolt back in. Position the bracket to look. So we supply 5 feet of hose for both configurations. If you're doing the pressure control system like this, we're gonna pull the hose nice and kind of like snug. We're gonna cut it. You can cut it with a utility knife, no problem. Just make sure your cut is nice and flat, not on an angle. Then you can plug this into the bracket. There, make sure it does that click that all the fittings do, and you're done over here. So now that we've got everything in, we're going to install our maxi fuses. Make sure they're fully seated, and you can put the cover on. They are a snug fit. Put the cover on, and then we can just nicely put them to the side here so they're out of the way. We're just doing a cleaner install here, so we're going to trim nicely this battery positive cover. Once again, using a knife, be careful. You just want to make it so we can sit the cover down. The wires are here, out of the way. Now, before you put the seat back together and everything, you just want to make sure it works so you don't have to unbolt everything to just double check your connections. It's working. With the Kraken system, we supply you with 2 new bolts. Now, depending on if you have the new power seats or not, so you don't have to use the new bolts with the manual seat, but we still recommend using these 2 bolts in the rear. Now, if you have a power seat, that's where the 2 washers come into play. We want you to put this washer in between the seat bracket and the Kraken to lift it up the just over 1/8 of an inch it's gonna do. This is providing much needed clearance from the power seat motor. So you just kind of push the seat up, line them up, use the provided new bolt. Make sure to always start new bolts by hand. You don't want to just cross thread, despite how tight that truly is. Save your old 2 bolts in case you decide to move the Kraken to a new vehicle and you got to put this one back to stock. The new bolts are 8mm hex bit. So depending on your floor mat, trimming will be different. We just happen to be working on one that has the Mopar floor mats today. So all we're gonna do is carefully with our knife, without cutting our arm open, I'm just gonna follow the line. Now this will go right back where it wanted to go. Make sure you connect the 2 halves. Push down the 2 things. There you go.
All right, so we've got the Kraken installed in the vehicle now, and we've got the pressure control upgrade kit installed on the Kraken. So now you need to grab your cell phone of choice, smartphone of choice, and head to the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store and download the ARB Compressor Connect app. Once you've got the app, we're going to open that up. It'll ask us if we'd like to use Bluetooth, and in this case, I'm going to say OK. Now, we've got all 4 tires hooked up to the Kraken system. There's no leaks that we can hear, so that is good. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn on the system. should hear nothing. You should hear the fan on the air compressor start to run, but no cycling of the actual compressor pump. In the app, it'll take you to the settings screen, and at the very top, we want to click on Connect to Pressure Control. It'll scan for the pressure control module that we just installed. It'll pop up. Once it's found, we want to click Connect to Pressure Control. Now we have a few settings to change. First and foremost, we prefer to change the unit of measure to PSI. That will change over the max system pressure to 60 PSI, which we find is a safe recommendation. No tire that's going on a Jeep should really be inflated anywhere near 60 PSI, so that's a good safe threshold. Below that, the power on mode. It's very important that we set this to control. That means every time you turn the system on, it will default to that control power mode, and it will bring or raise or lower the tire pressure to your target pressure that we'll see on the other page. If you want, you can have an audible alert. So once your pressure threshold is hit, it'll give you a little bing bing sound on your phone if you're away from the vehicle. We also recommend that you turn on the allow only if engine running setting. That just allows the compressor to work a little bit better, perform better with the voltage coming from the alternator off the engine. So we're going to go back to the main screen, and this is where you can set your target pressure. So this is the pressure that we want. I'm looking for about 32 PSI, so I'm just going to tap on 30 PSI, up to, click OK. Now nothing happens yet because the pressure control mode is currently in pressure off. In order to actually fire and enable the system, we hit pressure control. Immediately, the system will come to life and it will raise all the tires up to that 32 PSI. So we'll come back to you once it's there. There we are. So we're up at our target pressure. System shuts off. It's good to go. From there, you can turn it off, disconnect your hoses, be on your way. And you can come in here and you can adjust the pressure every single time if you want something a little bit different. Or what you can do is you can set presets. So in the settings portion of the app, there are 4 presets that you can set. So on preset 1, I want about 35 PSI for the highway. So I'm going to dial that up to 35 and name that the highway preset. I also want a city preset with a little bit lower tire pressure, just to make going over those potholes a little bit more comfortable. For the city boys, we're going up to 30. Now, if we go back to the main screen, you'll see at the top here, we have presets that we can set. So I'm looking for the city setting, so I'll tap that, and you'll hear the system will actually start purging out pressure.
Looking for an EPIC Jeep or Ram? Give us a call.